here, y'all. The Purple kick off their season this Sunday when they head east to take on the New York Football Giants. Kickoff is at noon with pregame coverage starting at 10. Catch it all right here on your home for Vikings football, KFAN, or anywhere you go on the free iHeartRadio app.
Here comes the scribe. Ben Goessling covers the Minnesota Vikings for the Star Tribune, StarTribune.com. At Ben Goessling is where you find him via Twitter. Into his 13th season covering the Minnesota Vikings, and here he is at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. About 5 minutes in front of Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Vikings, joining us in that chair. That's going to be sweet, having a KOC here weekly on Tuesdays. And good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I was just adjusting the chair height for the microphone because the microphone is I wasn't able to get that up, so I have to lower the chair, and I'm 6'1", so closed circuit to KOC, if you're listening, you're going to have to fiddle with the height of this even more than I am, because he's, I think, got about 4 inches on me.
13th season covering the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
It's hard to believe. Why? It's been that long. It just went fast. I mean, it's gone really fast. The first year was Adrian MVP, 2012. And, you see a lot. There's just
How quick twitches your memory with old school games, like 2012?
Pretty good.
All right, so that's a Ponder year.
Yep.
Musgrave is the offensive coordinator.
Yep.
They can't throw.
Right.
Percy is throwing things behind the scenes. He's so upset that he's not getting the ball. And the first-round quarterback in his second year is having some significant problems. It's like, all this entire spring and summer.
Yeah.
Where we would hear either, behind the scenes with Kevin O'Connell or on the record about J.J. McCarthy has a fastball.
Yeah.
Well, now he needs a change, and then we need the circle change off the change. Ponder came into it with the change and the circle change and never could get the fastball.
Yeah, that's kind of where it went.
And so there came a time late in that season where Musgrave just was kind of like, bleep it. I don't care if they put 10 in the box. I'm running that guy every single play until you can stop it.
Yeah, and nobody could.
Right. And one of the more memorable ones for me, I think it was TWA Dome at the time.
St. Louis?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Trans World Airlines.
Yep.
And Jeff Fisher comes out with a 5-man front.
Yeah.
A bear defense with his biggest guys on the line of scrimmage. And he's like, all right, Bill, go ahead. It might have been the first, second, or third play of the game. Adrian busted it up the middle, made the linebacker miss on the right, headed to the left, and outran everybody for maybe 82. Into a bare front. I mean, an absolute 10 of 10 run-stopping front. And then he became the MVP.
He hit a gear on that play, and we saw him do some crazy things. Like that Packer game where he had, I think, 2 90-yarders. Was 2 weeks before that, but on that run, I mean, as soon as you started talking about this, my mind immediately went to Rams, week 14 or 15, whatever that was, I think week 15.
Yeah.
That run, because I remember seeing him bust into the open field, and he talked afterwards about there were some Rams players that were chirping a little bit that got him fired up, but his getaway speed on that, I mean, and Adrian had great getaway speed, but that was on a level that I have never seen since then. I remember just watching that and saying, oh my gosh, this is not normal what we're watching. And but again, by that point we had seen it enough that you kind of start to say, yeah, okay, he does this. It's almost becomes silly that it becomes normal, but even by that standard, that run, I just remember like, whoa, what did we just watch?
And and another strange facet of 2012 is they have the win and in against Green Bay.
Great game.
Oh, it's phenomenal.
Still top 5 for me all
Probably
time.
Ponder's best pro game.
Yeah. Might have been. And they won like 34-31. It was a high-scoring game. And they got into the postseason. And they got a trip to Lambeau. And Christian had something like the inside of his throwing arm.
Yeah, I think he got hit in the elbow by a helmet in that week 17 game.
And part of his bicep was like completely purple, right?
Yeah. And part of it down the forearm.
Yep.
I mean, it was gross, and they tried to get him going, and they couldn't do it, but it was interesting how the tail can end up wagging the dog. In that people were pining for Ponder because he knew how to run the offense. And it's like, well, Joe Webb in a playoff game, holy cow. So they go from, the kid who didn't have the fastball, but boy, the circle change was good. Yeah. And now he was managing it beautifully with the MVP at tailback. Well, now he can't play, and people are crestfallen because Ponder can't play.
Right, and then they start that playoff game with that drive. They're running read option stuff with Webb and Adrian. They go down and kick a field goal, and it's like, hey, this could actually work. And then they kind of just went back to the normal offense. And then the next week, so the Packers win that game, and they go to San Francisco, and Colin Kaepernick runs for like 182 on the read option stuff, and it's like, yeah, that would have worked. You could have continued to do that against that team. And they probably just didn't have enough of it in to go back to it over and over because obviously Ponder wasn't doing that very much. But, it's one of those where you wonder if they would have just said, we're going to run the same 4 plays over and over and over and over, and they're not going to be able to stop it, especially when it's Adrian Peterson as one of these 2 options.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have worked. I don't know. That seems a little thin to imagine, but it would have been interesting to see what happened if they'd continued with
your inaugural season as the scribe covering the Minnesota Vikings. The bookenders. Well, you caught one bad one. The one before it was really bad.
Yes.
2011. There aren't many. In fact, there are, I think, only 2 games in all the games that I've called for the team over the years where I came into the game thinking, I know they can't win. I just know they can't win, and here's why. The first one was 2006. Childress's first year, final game of the season at home against the St. Louis Rams. And the Rams had Scott Linehan as their offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Well, they got eliminated from the playoffs the night before when the Giants either won or lost. They needed the Giants to do something. And, but the problem is Brad cut Marcus Robinson on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And the locker room was full of Love Boat vitriol.
Yeah.
Because after the Love Boat, there were major problems in the locker room with people like, dog, why didn't you get my back on this? This and that. It was just really, really divisive. And so when he cut Marcus Robinson on Christmas Eve, it was one of the least popular moves in the 20-whatever years I've been next to the team. But in that 2011, there was a game late in the season. Drew Brees came in sitting on like 18 records. If he had like 480 or 500 yards or more, and the Saints were good.
Yeah.
I don't think they scored 50. Maybe they did, but they ran up some points. Drew got all the records, and I think John Sullivan, the center, had just gotten a big deal like the day before or day of. So that's some positivity. But that was a game I didn't think they could win. 2013 was different. Your second year was Leslie Frazier's final year coaching the team. He takes over middle 2010, wins at FedEx Field, and Lieber and a bunch of guys lift him up. Not Lieber, I don't think Ben was on the team, but a bunch of defensive players lifted him up and stuff like that. Maybe Ben was, but. So Leslie's out. What a wonderful man to work with.
Yeah.
We just chatted about Mike Zimmer, and Zim did some good things here. Got the team to the NFC title game. Is considered one of the most innovative defensive minds in the history of the game. Mike was very good to me in his time that he was head coach here. But nevertheless, can you talk about 2 more different people than Leslie Frazier and Mike Zimmer?
Yeah, it was quite a stark difference. And I think when they made that move to fire Leslie Frazier, I mean, there was a lot of talk about we need to clean up a lot of things. And certainly defensively, there was a lot to clean up. That was, I think, that 2013 team, they had blown 5 leads in the last minute, if I want to say. And I mean, it was like week 2, the first one. Well, I guess that was the first one that they blew in Chicago. I remember that last play with Chris Cook. I remember going into that locker room. It's still the most like raw locker room setting I've ever been in because there were so many, and we got in there really quick. Sometimes they opened the door at Soldier Field pretty quick. And it was like, okay, do you guys need us to come back later? There was so much raw emotion because that team had lost 2 straight in the NFC North to start the season, and everybody kind of knew this is going to be a really tough road to go from here, and you're coming off of a playoff berth and hoping for good things in 2013, and it kind of becomes clear that wasn't going to happen. I don't know how many times I've gone back in the locker room here or at Winter Park and talked with Harrison Smith about that game, the end of that Bears game, but it's probably about once a year that I go back and just be like, dude, what happened? And we've talked about it enough I think I have a better sense of it, but that's one of those that even on his mind is still like, yeah, that one stung. And there were a lot of those that year. So they make the change from Frazier to Zimmer in part to clean up the defense to, I think, probably just build a culture that needed something different at that point and needed some more of what he had in those early days, just the discipline, a little bit more of the fire that they wanted. And you saw it work. I mean, certainly 2015, he goes into Lambeau Field. They beat the Packers in Week 17, and then obviously that defense for the next few years is the cream of the crop in the NFL. They get to the playoffs 3 times in 5 years as a result of it. But yeah, I mean, it was, in terms of covering them or just relating to them, yeah, quite a big difference from Leslie Frazier to Mike Zimmer, and then Mike Zimmer to Kevin O'Connell in a lot of ways too.
And what with the Star Tribune Zimmer tell all over the weekend. One thing that would have been really interesting, at least for me, and I think the audience would have liked it too, is let's not forget that somewhere in 2016, an incredibly prideful, successful coordinator quit.
Yeah,
Norv Turner.
Yep.
Okay, so why did Norv quit? I know, but I think a lot of people would like to know. It would have been interesting to get Norv's perspective, and I think Norv would have turned the other cheek and just, respectfully declined.
I think so.
But at least he would have been called. That would have been interesting. 2016 was interesting, but, with 2017 and the Minneapolis Miracle game, Ben's into his 13th year covering the Vikings. Did you, so you got the Miracle, and then you're at practice during the course of the week, doing what you're doing, and the team is getting, as much attention as a Minnesota Vikings team ever has received in the history of the organization.
Yep. Because now they're one game from being the first team to host a Super Bowl, like play at home in a Super Bowl. It's happened twice since then, but they would have been first.
Oh, wow, that's right.
Nobody had even made it to the NFC title game at this point.
Philly special, though.
Yep.
I remember like an hour to 90 minutes after the game is I'm in the locker room.
After the Saints game?
After the Saints game.
Yep.
After the Miracle game. And everybody had left, and there's Stephon Diggs with one of his brothers, not Trayvon, and probably about 5 people. And he was just exhausted.
Yeah.
Just sitting back in the chair. Mm-hmm. He'd done 8 million interviews. I think he just signed a Geico deal. There's like a lot of things that just happened in a short amount of time. And when practice began for the Eagles game that Wednesday, it's like if you rewound a week into the Saints game, when they came here at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, when they came busting through, it would be Winter Park. Yeah,
last year,
at Winter Park. Yeah.
Like 2 months before this place opened.
I'm thinking US Bank Stadium 2016. When they came busting through the doors from the weight room at Winter Park into the Saints game, they were full of fire.
Yeah.
Just energized, freshened, everything. Then they win the game in super dramatic fashion. Everybody's exhausted. Everybody's getting tapped on with just because of the unique nature of the way the game ended.
Yeah. Even the number of guys that I remember talking about staying up till like 3 a.m. watching the highlights.
Right.
Just like, how did this happen?
Right.
And you're living on cloud 9, but then you got to come back down. And go to Philly.
Who was the wide receiver? My man was on the practice squad, inactive every single week. The first one to get down to Diggs.
Oh gosh,
he was like he was really good friend.
Was it Rodney Adams?
No, but it was somebody of that variety.
Yeah,
like
this is a
name like that.
This is a deep cut.
But my man's doing podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. There was
my man's
so
on
much
like
of that.
NFL Network.
Yeah.
How did you become the first one down there? If Greg Coleman had not pointed right, do we think Steph would have gone the other way?
Yes, there were a lot of that.
And what's it like being part of this? So did you think into the Eagles game that because it was so physically and emotionally draining, you're winning 17-0 at halftime.
Yes.
You're killing them.
Yeah.
And then Breeze goes no huddle like 25 times in a row.
Right.
You can't stop it.
Yep.
Elite defensive minds can't stop it. You have a replacement center, replacement long snapper who goes to the wrong guy.
Jeff Overbaugh.
Well, now, Overbaugh, wow.
Yep.
And now we have a pump block, and now you got a lot of problems. And you're going to lose the game.
Yep.
And then the Minneapolis Miracle happens. Do you recall how much you felt the emotional and physical wherewithal taken on that team and that staff impacted the Eagles game?
Well, I certainly remember wondering about it all of that week. And I remember I picked the Vikings to win in Philly thinking, well, they're the better team. And, the Nick Foles run had started. But the Eagles, I think, barely squeaked by in that divisional round game against the Falcons, too. So I thought, okay, the Eagles are gettable.
Right.
Then Nick Foles obviously plays the game of his life and then repeated it 2 weeks later in the Super Bowl. And that team was, I think, you could see the exhaustion. You could see I think I remember even Zimmer talking about it that week of trying to get everybody back in line, back focused on the game. But it was really tough to do it because of the unique nature of how they win that and the emotional swings of the whole thing. It reminded me, the time I thought back to that the most is after that Bills game 2 years ago, when they win that the way they did. I remember going to that locker room in Buffalo. It's like, this feels a little bit like a playoff win of that nature. Like just the emotional swings in that one, and then to come back home the next week, you're playing the Cowboys, and they get blown out, in a very similar fashion to what happened in Philadelphia. So that game, I think that the Minneapolis Miracle and then going into that Eagles game taught me a lot about the degree to which it's really tough to do that, to go from an emotional victory like that one was, or like the Bills game was, and say, hey, we got to come back the next week because we've got another tough opponent. Obviously, regular season, there's some margin for error. Playoffs, there is not. But I think both of those games are similar in that fashion. And remember learning a lot about, don't underestimate this part of it when you're talking about a team trying to come back in the playoffs.
Nordo thinks he unveiled the name of the first one to get down to Diggs, who was a wide receiver.
Yep.
He was on the practice squad, and he and Steph were very close. And I'm pretty sure I'm looking at the Vikings practice squad in 2017.
He was on the practice squad 2017.
Yeah.
Well, he joined.
See, this one's in pictures. The one that I'm looking at.
Okay, so what's the setup for this? Don't tell me who it is yet.
So he started out with the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad in 2016.
Okay.
He nailed it. He's right.
Came to Minnesota, ultimately was on our practice squad up to 2018.
Okay.
And he was a wide receiver. He went to both Texas and Arizona.
I believe this to be accurate.
He was undrafted in 2016. And
his initials are CJ, but he's not Ham.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second initials.
Clue, number
9
2.
to noon style from TCOPC. Clue number 2. This CJ has the same first name as a prominent current rookie quarterback in the NFL.
Ooh.
So Caleb.
On with this now.
Here we go. Come on.
Caleb Johnson?
No, yeah. Okay, Muss has an opportunity to steal, and if you steal this, Muss, you pass AJ, Meat Sauce, and the Twin Scribe for initials immortality. Clue number 3. This Caleb has the same last name as an edge rusher for the current Minnesota Vikings who doesn't start.
Caleb Jones.
There it is.
Caleb, that's the right one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
It's Caleb Jones.
Yep.
Well, I found this. Stefan himself said it was Caleb Jones.
Oh, there we go.
So here's what. Yeah, who was the first person that hugged you after that? I guess he was asked on NFL Network. It was Caleb Jones.
Yeah.
He was one of the guys who was pulling me throughout the year.
Yeah.
So I think that was to your point. Is this was a practice squad cat that was buddies with Stefan.
Yep.
And he went down there. He was the first one to hug him.
He was Tristan. Well, Tristan Jackson's on the 53 now, but he's Tristan Jackson to Steph's Justin Jefferson, so to speak.
Now, Ben Goessling at Ben Goessling. Go to the Twitter spot because you can listen to Access Vikings, which I believe transpired last week, which means a new one probably is coming soon.
Yep.
But we also have the super special newsletter, Access Vikings newsletter. And Ben wrote about the Vikings running game and much, much more. With the running game, and I gravy trained this via Twitter.
Yeah.
Running back Aaron Jones opened a vein yesterday, had an elongated chat with Scribes et al. What did Aaron share?
Well, it was interesting to hear him kind of talk, because the big question with him, obviously, is always, is he going to be able to hold up for the course of a season? Because he's had trouble doing that, had trouble playing 17-game seasons, has not been asked a whole lot to go carry the ball 200 times. And I don't know if that's going to happen here either. But one of the things he talked about is kind of just getting into a pre-practice routine that he feels like has helped him a lot. Prehab kind of stuff is how he would put it. Prehabilitation, playing on rehabilitation, obviously, but getting areas of his body, especially that have had injuries in the past, knees, ankles, hamstrings, loose and ready to go for practice, he feels like has helped him ward off the fatigue that comes from practice afterwards, which then makes it easier to go into games. This is something he started doing last year more often in his offseason stuff, but he basically said when he came here, he was talking about doing this, and the Vikings athletic training staff basically said, yeah, we've already got a plan for you because we're thinking the same things. And so it was kind of this thing right away where they both clicked on this and said, yeah, this is important to me. It's important to us too. Let's go with it. So he said he feels like he could play another 7 or 8 years. I don't know that he's going to do that. I mean, obviously, Adrian Peterson is one of the rare ones that was even able to get close to that, and he didn't even get all the way there. But said he feels as good as he has in a long time and is looking forward to have the season of his career. And everybody, you hear the I'm in the best shape of my life stuff at the beginning of every season in every sport.
Well, and Adrian always said, I'm going to run for 2,500 yards this year.
He said that after that 2012 season. And some of us believed he could do it because...
Well, and he opened up at Ford Field in 2013 with that 78-yard touchdown.
Yep. It was like, here we go. But, yeah, I mean, it is, I think, difficult to do it, and I think Ty Chandler is going to have a big role in this whole thing. But Aaron Jones is feeling awfully good about where he's at physically at this point. I know there are a lot of people in this team, and Brian O'Neill talked to you about it a couple weeks ago, how much they believe Aaron Jones is going to make an impact on what they do. And I think if they keep him healthy, we saw it in the playoffs last year for the Packers, he still has quite a bit left.
Who returns kicks for the Minnesota Vikings and much more? Is Jordan Addison going to be up to speed for the Giants game this weekend? We will dive into those topics and much more with Ben Goessling. He's the scribe at Ben Goessling via Twitter for more on the Access Vikings newsletter and or podcast. And Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, joins 9 to noon about 30 minutes from now at TCOPC. We. What do you know about the kick returner or kick returners?
Well, I think Myles Gaskin is going to be part of that. It's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. Obviously, Kene Nwangwu is not here, but yeah, I would think Gaskin is involved. You could put Brandon Powell back there, probably Jalen Naylor, although Naylor wasn't practicing yesterday, so we'll see how the week shakes out for him. But the whole kickoff thing is going to be interesting. I think there's still kind of this mystery of how all of this plays out. So the players you put back there may be different. It's not necessarily just the straight line speed guy, because you do need somebody that can set up blocks and probably can make things happen in tighter spaces than it was in the old kickoff. But yeah, I think Gaskin's going to be involved there, and it'll probably change based on how different teams play it, because I think there's still just a lot of mystery about it.
And here's what's weird about it too. Myles Gaskin has been mentioned, and I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
But there has to be a transaction that takes place for him to get up. So it's, they get the final 53, and we're all like, only 2 running backs. What's going on? 3 with CJ. And they do have Gaskin. I'm just curious who the odd man out is then eventually, if you're going to make good on what you spoke of with Gaskin. Yeah. I mean, there would have to be something in the offing here at some point. Maybe it's, I don't even necessarily want to speculate about it, but an injury thing could have some way to clear a spot if they have something there. But yeah, I mean, there would have to be something to get him up, but I do think they have plans for him to be involved quite a bit, so that will happen.
So you're playing off Kwesi's press conference.
Yeah. And I'm talking to and hearing O'Connell talk about it a little bit too. I think they see him as being certainly a major part of their special teams, and probably not just on the kick returns either.
A pressure point. This is something that 9 to noon is going to do daily, one way or another, certainly up to the season opener, maybe during the course of the year, but pressure points. And a pressure point is Sam Darnold. This is a big spot for Sam Darnold, not just this game, but this season. And then that's been talked out a little bit, but now it's here. And he's a point of pressure until he shows he can run this offense at a high level, which he hasn't shown. He can't run it at a high level, but it's What triggered this for me is when I left the State Fair on Friday.
Yeah.
One of the last things I said was, before saying goodbye, I'm talking about the Giants, and hey, they upgraded here, and the offensive line's a little better. Superstar receiver. I like Malik Neighbors a lot. But Daniel Jones. Then I'm driving home thinking to myself, well, anybody can come at me or come at Vikings fans and say, yeah, nice, but Sam Darnold.
Right.
It's the same thing.
Yep.
To a certain extent. Daniel has more recency than Sam.
Right.
But Sam Darnold and this point of pressure. What do you think about the whole thing?
I think that's the major issue that I think is dictating a lot of the kind of cool reception to the Vikings nationally. And I think, even the Star Tribune predictions this weekend, my own predictions, I think I picked 8 and 9, I think. And I'm like, they could be better than that. But it hinges on Sam Darnold being able to run this offense at a level that allows them to win a lot of games that you may not think they would be able to win normally. So, that early stretch, I think, is awfully tough. We've talked about that a lot. But it requires a level of consistency from that position to go out and be able to win 55% of your games that he has yet to show in the NFL. And they're optimistic about him, certainly. They're optimistic about a lot of what they saw in training camp and that little snippet in the preseason. I think we saw a lot of what had happened on the practice field kind of transfer over. However, that is not the same thing as doing it on a Sunday when people are game planning for you. There's unscouted looks, there's different pressure packages. All of that stuff changes and ramps up a notch or probably several notches in the regular season. And how does he handle all of that is still the big unknown here.
Week 1 specifically, weeks 1 and 2 I am of the camp, and I believe you are too, that it's age-old cliche that I shared with Football Immortality, Tom Moore, who was on the radio show an hour ago, is X's and O's, but Jimmy's and Joe's.
Right.
Where the Jimmys and Joes, the players, they matter more than anything.
Yes.
And even Bill Belichick and or Vince Lombardi would tell you that. Week 1 and weeks 1 and 2, the coaches matter as much, if not more, than they will at any point during the course of the year. Where do you want to go back to? 2015, Jim Tomsula?
Yeah.
Was it 2015?
Yeah.
The battering in the Bay.
Yeah,
the battering in the Bay.
Oh, gosh.
Here's Tomsula, lifetime defensive line coach. He's going to play bully ball, use 4 tight ends, and run basally every single play.
Carlos Hyde ran for like 230 or something.
Carlos Hyde. Yeah, he went nuts.
Yeah.
But it's
game also started like midnight Central Time.
Nobody knew. That's right. It was a doubleheader.
Yeah, they were the
nobody knew that approach was coming. Okay, well, you're paid to know that's coming. Come on. This is a first-time head coach.
Right.
Nobody had any idea, with the exception of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who had film on it and caught Tom Sula the next week and beat him by 30.
Yeah.
So it's now that was on film, the metaphorical jig was up.
Yeah, somebody had to play him first.
See, but early games. Now, O'Connell was doing a number on Todd Bowles last year.
Yeah.
It started slowly, and we had a penalty on O'Neal, but then things settled in, and they go 61 effortless yards to get down to the 25-26. Cousins drops it. Or there's an aborted snap, and it's Buccaneers ball.
Yep.
And then you're looking to move again. Antoine Winfield unblocked on a strip sack.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a gotcha by the defense.
Right.
By Todd Bowles and his defense. The gotcha plays can transpire week number 1, and that's what where my curiosity goes with this game, because Darnold's new with this team. Jones didn't play in the preseason. Either did Justin. Sam played 1 series. It's now on the other side. Malik Neighbors played in the preseason. You got no idea what's coming with Malik Neighbors and the routes and everything. And they've made some moves on their offensive line. They like it. So this weekend's game has so much coach appeal to it, don't you think?
Yeah, it does. And Shane Bowen, the new defensive coordinator for the Giants.
Yep.
His defense in Tennessee had been there in Tennessee. They are, the term is multiple, but they will, obviously Brian Flores would be described as that as well, but they will throw a lot of different things, probably some of them unscouted. I know the Tennessee tape from last year around here this week is in high demand, but there's still going to be new things. There's still going to be new wrinkles to how it plays out with this set of players in New York. So how the Vikings scout those things, how they react to things they haven't seen, how they throw their own things in there to put the Giants on their heels. There's a lot of that with this one, just because new coordinator on the defensive side of the ball, new quarterback for the Vikings. On the Vikings defensive side of the ball, lots of new pieces playing against a Giants team that has a new receiver, and Daniel Jones kind of trying to keep himself in the good graces of those fans. So, yes, a lot of X's and O's type wrinkles to this one that I think are going to be pretty interesting.
That's what excites me specifically on the defensive side of things. Whether it's Jerry Tillery, Jonathan Grenard, Blake Cashman, Andrew Van Ginkel, Stephon, both your corners, say Byron Murphy, of course.
Dallas Turner.
There's the new. So it's same coordinator. But one thing, when you've joined us on Tuesdays all summer, it's like, can they play more man-heavy defense with these names? What this is going to look like PA and pressure points. There's something about Jonathan Grenard proving, he probably doesn't look at it this way, but maybe outside, showing that 12.5 sacks last year, that's the standard, not an aberration.
Yeah.
All of those things like pressure points across Flores' group are so intriguing too.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there are a lot of guys that were either given new contracts or picked highly in the case of Dallas Turner, or are playing on one-year deals. I mean, the Vikings made a lot of moves in the offseason. They sound like 14 free agents. And then, you continue to do that into training camp. And obviously, Stephon Gilmore comes in August. A lot of players are on one-year deals. So there's a lot for many, many people on this defense to prove. And again, like you said, you're not thinking about that probably on a Sunday, but as you go into a season, okay, I know where I'm at. I know where my contract's at. I know where I need to show something kind of to set my future up. So all of those things, I think, kind of are an overarching mentality that goes into the season.
Pressure points.
Yeah, yes.
All over the place.
There's all of that stuff involved.
All over the lastly, minute you get it all. Levi Drake Rodriguez, Taki Taimani, Jalen Redmond, et al. Who plays most and why? And is there some legit interior pass rush potentially to be had?
Yeah, I think there is. I think Rodriguez of those three probably plays the most. I think there'll be snaps for possibly Jalen Redmond as well. Taimani, we'll have to see if he gets on that active roster. But yes, I think with all three of those, there is pass rush potential. And there has not been interior pass rush of a standout nature around here for a while.
Since
Tom Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, but Tom Johnson.
He hits that reference every time.
Tom Johnson.
It's right.
It is. And he did
6.5 sacks, I think.
Yeah, he did 2 stints here in part because they knew they needed more pass rush. That Saints game in 2019, they put Griffin and Hunter in the middle to get that interior pass rush. So, yes, it has been lacking for a long time. I think Rodriguez, is he going to turn into an every down player? I don't know that. But I certainly think when you talk about some of that rotational pass rush, the Tom Johnson-esque nature of it, he could provide some of that. Yeah, it's important.
Let's if you have time, let's record Faith and Goal in the very near future.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for trekking, making the trek over here.
I got to be here anyway. It works out great.
Sweet. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
Ben Goessling, go to his Twitter feed at Ben Goessling, Goessling, and learn more about the Access Vikings newsletter, where Ben this week wrote about the Vikings running game, some more on Lewis Seen's dismissal, etc. And also Access Vikings podcast, which I would imagine would be popping soon sometime this week, at Ben Goessling via the tweet machine.
Join Meat Sauce and Nordo this Saturday at St. Croix Casino, Turtle Lake in the Book Sports Betting Lounge. Stop in from noon to 2 p.m. to get in on all the action, all while watching the games on their huge, and I mean huge TVs, plus great food and craft beverages. You can't beat that. Get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
All right, KOC 10 minutes from now, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings each and every Tuesday. It'll double his X's and O's, and here we are. All right, 3-2, News du Nord. All right, 3-2.
Brought to you by The Casino at Canterbury Park. Poker, blackjack, and table games all year round. Live racing still in play for, I believe, the next couple of weekends. So check it out while you can. And the start of all of that, just go to Canterbury.com. twins.park.com. Twins won 3 of 4 PA, including beating the Rays yesterday. And it's amazing what a week can do this time of year from a baseball standing standpoint, because the Royals, who were full speed ahead, they've lost 6 in a row.
Yeah. Your Royals coming up a little soft when the pressure point and the pressure cooker gets hot, though.
And because they've lost 6 straight, Twins back in second place.
Yeah, ain't nobody beating Cleveland.
No, I don't think so at all. But the key to all of this is 2 teams that Twins fans have been paying attention to. It's the Royals. They've lost 6 straight. The Boston Red Sox have lost 3 in a row.
Wow.
So the Twins currently have a 5.5 game buffer between being in or out of the wild card. They, of course, are currently in.
3 wild cards, right?
3 wild cards, yeah. And so Minnesota Twins, I think David Festa's on the mound for them today against the Rays.
Festa against Jeffrey Springs, who he got himself hurt. Now, Springs was incredibly highly touted, and he's getting himself back in gear. He's pretty good. Springs can be tricky. Festa can be tricky, too. They granted they lose all those games to Atlanta. I thought Festa was pretty good against certain constituents and members of what can be a vaunted Braves lineup.
Was that the game where he went 6 strong, and then in the 7th things started kind of unraveling?
It was the Alcala game.
Oh, okay,
They lost. That was the bottom line. But the 2 things here. The Twins in getting that Sunday victory against Toronto. That was so key. This is, without Correa, without Buxton, you lose certain pitchers, including Joe Ryan, who definitely could help at this time of the year. This is a mentally tough team. I know we had an 11-0 or something like that against the Blue Jays, but aberrations like that will happen. They won the Gausman game, which they needed to win, and they meatloaf Toronto. They meatloaf Toronto. 2 out of 3 wasn't bad, and that was key. This is a mentally tough team where you can just tell that it's being preached. It's important to get the series opener. All right, everybody may preach that, but not everybody comes through with it. They do. So the 2 out of 3 ain't bad trick the rest of the way. Definitely will get them into the postseason. However, point 2. Gavin Williams for the Cleveland Indians yesterday. Holy cow. I mean, the Braves are going the Royals are going punchless into every night. My man went on the road and just stymied them. The Royals, I think, had 2 hits in the entire game. They only had 1 off Gavin Williams. So 2 things here. He's their best pitcher, and he's getting better by the second. And he was mesmerizing against the punchless Royals yesterday. So Cleveland has World Series cred, man, with Jose Ramirez and Josh Naylor and Jimenez and so on and so on. I'd make them prohibitively favored to win the Central.
I don't know where this money comes from, PA, but Trent Williams, it sounds like he's back in the mix.
Oh, wow.
He posted on social media he's back in the Bay Area, headed to SF to finalize a new deal. Mm-hmm. So they figured out how to find money for Brandon Ayuk. It sounds like they're figuring out how to pay Trent Williams.
Yep.
So by the time week 2 rolls around, we'll be facing the full-strength Niners at U.S. Bank Stadium.
Right, that week 2 for sure. Now, full-strength Niners, full-strength the Dallas Cowboys, full-strength Cincinnati Bengals. With Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams, 4 of the more ballyhooed hold-out/ins. Teams know this. You just got to be super careful early in the season that those guys don't push it the wrong way and all of a sudden mess something up and they're out for like 4 to 6 games simply because they didn't get the team off-season strength and conditioning and or training. So those will be a few things that yours truly is looking for with them. Not wishing it on them. They're all high-end, but nevertheless, that's fair.
Jaron Hall, it was talked about last week. He was waived. Brett Rippon enters. We're all scratching our heads. Jaron knows the system, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah.
Clearly, the quarterback experience of a year ago has remained hot and deep on the minds of those in this front office for the Minnesota Vikings. So they're making moves. Well, they said last week, we'd like to have Jaron back. Kind of unfinished business, chance to continue to develop him via the practice squad. Jaron Hall, it sounds like, has decided and opted for a fresh start. He's on the Seattle Seahawks practice squad.
Hall going play action. Does Zach Charbonnet or Carbonet firing deep right side too? Jake Bobo. But nevertheless, he's living his dream. He's in the National Football League and with an opportunity one day to maybe be be active and play games. So good for Jaron. And good for Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. His weekly debut is right around the corner from Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. You're listening to 9 to Noon.